Now this is a great dish, and it's a great dish any time of year. It's a chocolate fondant or middle melt puddings, and I'm going to serve that with a simple ice cream, an ice cream that takes about 2 minutes to make once the bananas are frozen. But it's an instant banana ice cream with some toffee bananas. The combination of all those lovely flavours works so well. So before we start, have a nice glass of wine, why not? Then, what we need to do first of all is concentrate on our bananas first, and we need to freeze these. So I've got 4 bananas over here, and you can do this with any fruit really, but bananas work the best and strawberries work really good. So what you want to do is you want to freeze these and freeze the fruit. And interestingly enough, when you freeze bananas, they don't go brown. They stay the same colour. And we use them when they're rock solid, frozen, to make this ice cream. And if you're using strawberries, just take the hull of the strawberries, the green off, and just freeze the whole thing. So rather than chop the strawberries up like I'm doing with the bananas, just leave them whole. Now with the bananas, you don't want to chop them too fine. You don't want to cut them thinly sliced. You want them sort of about centimetre thick slices like that. Now any bigger, they're quite difficult to blend when you blend the ice cream. Any thinner, when you blend the ice cream melts too quick. So it's important that you get them about no more than a centimetre thick. And 1 banana will serve probably about 1 portion of ice cream. And you don't need a fancy ice cream machine, nothing for this. What you want to do is take the bananas like that. And I like to freeze them on a tray rather than pop them into a bag and then freeze them. Because if you freeze them on a tray, then when they're rock solid frozen, you can then take them out and put them in a bag. That way they're all individual. You don't want them sort of lumping together, and that you'll get that if you do put them all in a bag and then freeze them. They're quite difficult to break up. So once you get to that stage, pop them in the freezer, ideally overnight, until they set frozen. Those are going to go in there. Meanwhile, we can pay attention to our fondant, our middle melt pudding bit. I've got over here a pan of hot water. Chefs call this a bain-marie. It's just basically hot water in a pan, a bowl, and just sit that over the top. And now I'm going to melt the chocolate and the butter part of this. Now the chocolate, you can buy the little pistols or you can buy the block chocolate. It's entirely up to you, but it's got to be dark chocolate for this one. So don't use milk chocolate and don't use white chocolate. Dark chocolate. With dark chocolate, you get what you pay for. A lot of people say with dark chocolate, it gets really bitter. It's not true. The higher cocoa solids are in there. It's not true. It's all to do with the quality of the chocolate that they're using anyway. So we just pop the chocolate in here. I like to use the pistols because they're much quicker to melt, but you can use the block chocolate like that. Just break it all up. Now to help it on its way, we're going to add the butter to this as well. So in we go with the butter and just melt all this lot together. Just give that a quick stir. Now it's important that you don't allow any water to get into this, so just make sure the bowl's nice and clean and just melt that over the heat, over the bain-marie. Now while that's happening, we can pay our attention to the moulds. Now this is probably the most important bit of this entire recipe really, is the preparation of the moulds that you're going to cook them in. I'm actually going to use these little Dario moulds, and they come in different shapes and sizes. This is one of them. You can use these, which are also non-stick. You can use these. Even, to be honest with you, you can use a little coffee cup, because generally they can be oven proof, and you can just brush your coffee cup and pop the mixture in there and bake them in coffee cups. A little bit of a pain to clean afterwards, but the most important bit is when you do this is you use softened butter. And what I mean by that is softened. It mustn't be melted too much. If it's melted, what happens is as you butter the moulds, the butter sinks down to the bottom. When you bake the fondant and turn it out, you end up with a soggy bottom which becomes a soggy top. Anyway, that's what you end up with. But what you want to do with this is you want to take the softened butter and brush the moulds. Now, when I was working as a pastry chef in France, I worked at this amazing place called Trois Gros, which was a 3-star Michelin in France. And they taught me to butter the moulds like this. And you go up the way and you create these little lines. And this is the same whether you're doing a fondant, which they used to have on the menu, or the same whether you're doing a souffle. You must brush them all the same direction. So put the butter in the moulds, but when you take the brush, you brush up the moulds. So you get a distinct layers of lines when you're brushing the mould. Now, don't do it too thick, but also don't do it too thin. You can see you've got those nice little lines all the way up the side of the mould. But you've got to make sure you've got butter into the corners, because these are non-stick moulds. This is the only way you're going to get the fondant out, is getting the preparation right in the first place. Now the same thing applies to doing a souffle. It's all about, generally, the preparation is half the battle. If you get this bit wrong, whatever you do after that is irrelevant. This is the most important bit, really, is getting these all prepared. So they've all got those nice little lines on it. They're all nicely buttered. The butter is room temperature or softened butter and not melted. So you're brushing all the way up the way. So you keep going like that. You've got these amazing little lines all the way up. So make sure, for this recipe you want about 6. And that depends on the size of the moulds, really. If you're doing little coffee cups, you probably get more out of them, to be honest with you. You can do a larger one if you want, and just do one whole one. It's entirely up to you, but line them like that. Now, once you get to this stage, a bit like souffle, you can then reline them with either flour, cocoa powder, sugar. It's entirely up to you. I would stay away from cocoa powder, purely the fact that it can burn while these cook. And I'm going to use a little bit of flour for this one. Just some plain flour, and just put a little bit in each one of the moulds. Like that. They go in there. And then what you want to do is keep your fingers well away from the moulds and just roll this around so it coats all the edges, but particularly the bottom as well. And then tap out the mixture. What you don't want is any flour stuck to the bottom of the mould. The problem is with that, if you do get that, when you tip them out, you'll end up with white dots on top of the fondant. So just roll the flour all the way around, making sure your fingers don't go into the mould. Tap it out really well. You can see the lines that you get by brushing up the way. They're done. And just keep going all the way around. A little bit of flour all the way around. Tap it out. Check the mould, make sure it's all nice and evenly coated. If not, add a little bit more flour and do it again. Because this is quite crucial, you get to this stage. So once you get to there, nice and done, and continue going. Now you can line this with coconut, you can line this with nuts, a little bit of nibbed almonds, that kind of stuff. It's entirely up to you, but flour or sugar is usually the safest bet. So once you get to that stage and they're all nicely lined, you can see the lines all the way up the side of the mould, which are perfect. Once you get to that stage, we can then think about our fondant mixture itself. So the butter and the chocolate are nicely melting away nicely. And then we've just got 3 other ingredients into this. There's some sugar, there's some eggs, and a little bit of flour. And what you want to do now is then, using a machine, put the eggs into this machine. So 4 eggs for this one, just crack them into there. And then only really do this when the butter and the chocolate are melted, because the minute I add the sugar to this, and there's quite a bit of sugar going in here, it starts to cure the egg yolk. So try not to get into the habit where you put the eggs and the sugar together in there like that, then go away and start to melt this, because in about a minute or 2, the sugar will actually cure the egg yolks. And if you start to mix it, you'll end up with little dots of yellow that you can't get out. That's because the sugar has actually cured the egg yolks. So kind of cook them, really. So what you want to do, as soon as the sugar goes in, get this mix in, and this needs to mix for about 3 minutes. Now this bit's quite a crucial stage where you're not creating a sponge, but you're getting air into this. So needs a good 3 minutes, no longer than that, but get it on a high speed and get it mixing. So once you get to that stage, take the mixture off. You can see you've got this sort of light mixture, as if you were making a sponge, really. So once you get to that stage, I've got my chocolate nicely melted, so I'll just bring that to one side. which all the butter has gone, the chocolate's nicely dissolved, and then almost straight away we can add the rest of our ingredients. So I've got 3 ingredients. I've got the eggs and the sugar that are on here, the chocolate and the butter that are on here, and the flour which is on here. So what we want to do is just pour this mixture straight in. Now this requires, I think pastry is all about confidence. There's a skill level in it for sure. I've been a pastry chef for 35 years, but there's got to be a confidence with it. So when you're mixing it together, don't be doing this cupful, figure eight. Get the damn thing in there. Get it in the oven. The longer you spend faffing around at this stage, the less likely your fondants will have risen, because you've been messing around. Get the thing mixed, look, and get it mixed as quick as possible, but confidently. So you're not whacking out all the mixture, all the air, but you've been confident with it. So once that's all combined, that's the sort of texture that we're looking for. That's the mixture, all the mixtures combined in there. You can see that all that lovely mixture is all mixed together. All the chocolates combined as well. Once we get to that stage, then you need to fill up a piping bag. Now it's up to you. You can either spoon that straight onto here, but there's going to be mates of mine who are chefs watching this and training me and going, what are you doing? You need to do it in a piping bag. So hence the reason why we use one of these. And we put piping bag into a measuring jug. It means that when you pour this mixture in, you don't get your hands caked in mixture, look. Little chefy trick. Or you get a chef to hold the piping bag for you if you can't find a measuring jug. That's usually the case. Pour this mixture in. Now, as I said, if you don't want to use a piping bag, you'd have to use a spoon and evenly spread this in. But take your piping bag like that. All the mixture's in there. We then cut a little hole in the top, and then it's a simple matter of piping this evenly into your mould. So right in the centre, one. So get about halfway, stop, do the same thing again with the other one. Now depending on the size of the moulds, this mixture should do about 6 moulds. If it's not, you've been messing around folding everything in too long. So try wherever possible, try and get it in the mould rather than all over the edges. The problem is if you put it on the edges of the mould, it can burn as well. So get the mixture just in the centre, not dripping all over the edge of the dishes. And that's why a piping bag is a little bit easier. So once you got to that stage, now classically, there are 2 ways to make a fondant. You can either then put a piece of chocolate in the centre, or a chocolate truffle, and as you bake it, it softens up in the middle. This recipe, you don't need any of that. The most important thing with this is the timing. And I've set the oven about 180 degrees. It's 360 Fahrenheit, gas 5, 6, something like that. As soon as you put these in the oven, that's when the timer starts, because these should take about 8 to 9 minutes, depending on the size of the moulds. If they're bigger, like this one, you're probably looking at about 10 minutes. Bigger ones, 15 minutes. The timing is quite important because you want to cook these so they're middle melt, they're soft in the center. And that is exact timing. So as soon as these go in the oven, they want about 8.5 minutes. Exactly. I can tell when I press the top of it, but these need to go straight in the oven now. Now you can, if you wanted to, freeze these or pop them in the fridge and just cook them when you want. If you're cooking them from frozen, add another 2 minutes to the cooking time. But from the fridge, about the same time again. Usually about 8.5 minutes. Straight in the oven. So while they're in the oven, we can then concentrate on our bananas, because these are like toffeed bananas, hot toffeed bananas. And for that, we take another 4 bananas and simply pop these under the grill to caramelize them. Now you can either do these in the skins or like they are. I'll tell you what works brilliantly with this as well. if you wanted to, pop these bananas on a barbecue, because these just pop on the barbecue. You can put a little bit of rosemary in there, just pop them straight on the barbecue in the skins. Once the skins blacken like that, they start to split them down the middle with the chocolate fondant. Amazing. But that's level 2. This is much easier. So you take your bananas like that, peel them. And then grab a tray and then cut the bananas down the center. Now, you want to split these right down the middle. So a sharp knife, right through the middle. I'm going to turn these the other way up. Straight down the center, like that. Now, if you didn't want the pressure of doing this while your fondants are in the oven, do this in advance. They keep for about an hour and don't go brown. Once you get to that stage, you need some icing sugar, and quite a lot of icing sugar for this. When you've got enough icing sugar, put more on. Look at it. And make sure it is icing sugar and not flour. I've done that before. Lots and lots of icing sugar on. So once you get to that stage, set the grill quite high and just grill these for 2 or 3 minutes. And then just wait for 6 minutes. Right, fondant, looking pretty good. What you want to do really with this is, once they're cooked like that, is just leave them. And it's a good idea to leave them for about a minute, because leaving them for that minute, they'll just gradually shrink a little bit, and it makes it easier for them to come out the molds. So while they're shrinking a little bit, we can then turn our attention to our ice cream. I've got bananas over here which are frozen solid. So they can go straight into our machine. The toffee bananas are still under the grill. Once they're done, in here now, into the bananas, we just add a little bit of vanilla essence. You can either use vanilla essence, vanilla sugar, or vanilla extract. It comes in various sort of guises. This is a little bit of paste as well. You can use a touch of that if you wanted to as well. It's entirely up to you, but just a touch of vanilla. And then the liquid form of this is buttermilk. You don't put any sugar in this, just put some buttermilk. And then the idea being, as this churns and blends, the buttermilk freezes as the bananas defrost, and you end up with a really rich, smooth ice cream. But it makes quite a lot of noise to start off with, so fire this up. So every now and then, just give them a quick stir so it all blends nicely. Now this will refreeze again, so once you've blended it, it'll refreeze. It's not going to freeze like conventional ice cream, it'll go rock solid, so it'll last a couple of hours maybe in the freezer, but that's about it. Like I was saying at the beginning of this, you can do the same thing with strawberries, and it makes an amazing ice cream. The strawberries, but the temptation is to chop the strawberries up too fine. If you do that, you'll just end up with a puree and not an ice cream. Looks pretty good to me. Looks pretty good. Got an ice cream? Once we've got to that stage, and leave that to one side, we can pay attention to what we've got in here. So we can then take our nice little fondants and lift them out. Then cocoa powder. Nice drizzle of cocoa powder over the top. There's your plate. Take a nice little bit of toffee banana. These are amazing. These. Just take a nice piece of this. Oh, look at this. It's soft, it's gooey. Over the top. Take a nice little chocolate fondant to go with it. And then you've got a scoop of this banana ice cream. Remember, this is just frozen bananas and buttermilk. Look. You've got on there. So there you have it, my chocolate fondant with toffee bananas and banana ice cream. And the real proof of this is if you take these, never any doubt. Cheers. It was actually, I was bricking it.